The first question most people asked themselves when they heard that Todd Phillips was working on a sequel to Joker was, is it necessary? The problem with this question is that we never answer it with honesty. In other words, we choose our position based on our emotions, and afterwards we find the arguments to defend this position, no matter how much we really believe in them. If we want this sequel to happen, we say that it's indeed necessary, but if we don't want it, we say that it's a cash grab that serves no purpose. And that's not wrong. But if this is how we choose to look at cinema, then we must admit that we can consider almost every film ever made as cash grabs that serve no purpose. Joker Folie à Deux is as much a useless cash grab as the first film, as Transformers, Shawshank Redemption, or even Casablanca. Yes, it's a work of art, but it's also a product that serves to fill the pockets of the studios. But, from a purely narrative point of view, was it necessary to tell what happens to the Joker after the end of the first film? In the comics, the Joker has a very long criminal career that does not end on the night of his first appearance in the media or on the night the Waynes got killed. So yes, there's still a lot to tell about the Joker to those who do not read. For my part, I must admit that I wanted this sequel the second the first film ended, because what Todd Phillips gave us is not only an origin story of the Joker, but an angle of approach to the character and to Gotham, as well as a new way of making superhero movies. Whether you like the film or not, you have to be mature enough to recognize that it's an interesting angle and that the superhero movie really needs to be reinvented. Every 5 minutes there's a YouTuber shouting, "Cinema is dead!" as if the Hollywood model was the only one that existed, and as if the fact that Americans couldn't make blockbusters anymore meant that the entire art of cinema was going to disappear. Don't worry, there are other countries, other ways of making films, and if the Americans became the most popular after World War II, partly thanks to a little political and economic trick called the Marshall Plan, cinema doesn't need them. Cinema exists in many other forms than the superhero movie, and there are only two filmmakers who are really trying to interest the public who likes this genre to other forms of cinema, Matt Reeves and Todd Phillips. Yet, this transition is sometimes met with resistance and sometimes as an answered prayer. In 2019, at the end of Joker, I wanted three things. I wanted to see how this Joker would evolve as a criminal, I wanted to see how he would become Batman's worst enemies, and I wanted to see other Batman villains presented, not necessarily from the same angle and by Todd Phillips, but presented in an original way in form and substance.
Do you want to tell it to me?
The second question we are entitled to ask ourselves about Joker Folie à Deux is, why is it a musical? As I just explained, American cinema and particularly superhero films need to reinvent themselves and push their limits. Making the sequel to Joker a musical is both bold and strategic, because it's a good time to make musicals. In this type of film, the characters express emotions that they would not normally express unless the dialogues were very strange.
You two were 12 years training for this thing, hoping for this assignment.
Well, that's all over now.
If Maggie hadn't gotten sick, if you hadn't pulled yourself out of the rotation to take care of her, I mean, you...
Given that the Joker is an unreliable narrator who has now completely lost his mind, the musical is a good way to get a glimpse of what is going on in his head without us being entirely sure we can believe what we see and hear, since it's often a fantasized version of reality.
Where are the disabled in West Side Story or The Sound of Music? Where are the old and the infirm? Where are the mentally challenged?
Well, we know where they are in The Sound of Music.
In a way, we could say that Joker Folie à Deux proposes to make a musical about the people who are the least likely to appear in a conventional musical.
In a musical universe, it makes more sense that the people singing and dancing are just a sick minority. Everyone else is like us. They've just gotten used to it over time.
Wow, so the leads in musicals are just like the sad homeless people who are talking to themselves on the curb.
So every musical world is populated by a whole group of people who are just mentally ill and don't know any better but to sing their thoughts.
Maybe the Glee Club room in Glee is actually the special needs room.
You guys, it's like cool epilepsy.
That's why you never hear anyone else sing.
And yet, it's not the first film to change from one genre to the other, or to use the codes of a different genre to depict the fantasized reality of the patients in a psychiatric hospital. This is what Zack Snyder did in Sucker Punch. You see, I can give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. More recently, this technique was used in WandaVision and in Kevin Can Fuck Himself. This means that Joker Folie à Deux, despite its bold and original proposal, is still a film of its time, and is bold and original only in its proposal to bring together all these techniques in a film about the Joker and Harley Quinn. But what is the connection between the Joker and Harley Quinn to the musical?
I never knew that you and I were finished until that bottle hit my head. Though I tried to be aloof when you pushed me off the roof, I feel our romance is dead.
smells, Batman smelt, Robin laid an egg. The Batmobile lost the wheel, and the Joker got away.
Of all Batman's adversaries, the one who seems to have the most fun is the Joker.
This town needs an enema.
Unfortunately, this is an aspect of the character that seems to have been forgotten in the adaptations preceding 2019's Joker.
Why so serious?
What? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it. Never rub another man's rhubarb.
Indeed, even if the jokes of the Joker are bad, he's still supposed to have fun. Otherwise, why does he call himself the Joker?
Well, you look nervous. Is it the scars? You want to know how I got them? Come here. Hey. Look at me. So I had a wife, beautiful, like you, who tells me I worry too much. Who tells me I ought to smile more.
My smile is just skin deep. If you could see inside, I'm really crying. You might join me for a weep.
No offense to Nolan fans, but by making the Joker Bin Laden in a purple coat, we took away what made him different from almost every other film villain.
We're giving you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort.
Because the Joker is not only someone who has fun hurting people, the Joker is often someone who wants to have fun regardless of whether it hurts people. The difference between the two is almost imperceptible, and no Joker falls completely on one side or the other of that line. But one thing is for sure, the Bin Laden in a purple coat from The Dark Knight makes very few jokes for someone who calls himself the Joker.
Do I look like I'm joking?
Like Two-Face's coin, which always falls on its worst side, his so-called jokes mostly always have the same punchline, killing someone to make his plan progress. But the Joker can be a character way more fun. What he doesn't always have to make sense. And with the exception of the one Todd Phillips gave us in 2019, the last time we saw this Joker was in the animated series and in 1989's Batman. Some people criticize the museum scene in 1989's Batman on the grounds that it's strange, that it clashes with the rest of the film, and that it serves no purpose from a narrative point of view or a thematic one. In response to that last point, I refer you to my episode on the film where I quoted Wendy Burt and her essay on the critic of art in 1989's Batman. But as for the rest, once again with all due respect to those who only grew up with the most recent adaptations of the character, the Joker is supposed to be strange and he's supposed to clash with the rest of the film. Unlike what the Dark Knight did and maybe even what the Batman will do, the Joker should not become darker when Batman becomes darker. No, the darker Batman is, the less dark the Joker should be, because that's the only way he can make Batman lose his bearings and mock his reality.
You killed my parents. You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you?
And nothing is stranger than someone who suddenly starts singing his emotions, even in a musical where such a thing is acceptable.
Mr. Spock?
The intermix chamber and containment field are stable.
It's also one of the best ways to show a character having fun, and there's nothing stranger than someone who starts to sing and have fun when they shouldn't be.
Oh, maresy dotes and dozy dotes and little lambsy divey, a kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? A kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? A kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? Morning, dears.
Joker Folie à Deux is to the first film what Twin Peaks The Return is to the original Twin Peaks series. As in Twin Peaks The Return, history repeats itself in the sense that we are still waiting for Arthur Fleck to become the Joker, he is still the victim of a society that does not know what to do with him, and he becomes again the symbol of some part of the population that projects itself onto him. And like Twin Peaks The Return, Joker Folie à Deux makes fun of the audience's expectations.
Let's give the people what they want.
It's difficult to talk about the film without acknowledging that, as in the first one, there are at least two realities. And I'm no longer talking here only about the one where the characters sing and the one where they do not sing. No, from the beginning of the film, we are given several clues that Harley Quinn only exists in Arthur Fleck's head. She repeats gestures she couldn't have witnessed, doesn't get called by the guards unlike Arthur when the two stay in a burning room, and magically appears in Arthur's cell. Now, Harley isn't just a repetition of Sophie, since the film moves out of Arthur's perspective a few times, which only happened in the first film to show the Wayne murder, a scene Arthur couldn't have witnessed, but still included in his account of his origins, as if to claim the creation of Batman. If we see Harley without Arthur, does that mean she exists? Not necessarily, because Arthur Fleck may not be the main character in this new film, and maybe this time, the main character is the true nature of the Joker. I'll explain myself soon, but first, let's make sure we're on the same page. The film has at least two realities. There's the one where Arthur Fleck is the Joker, where Lee becomes Harley Quinn, where Bruce Wayne becomes Batman, where Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, and there's the one where it's all just a fantasy, because superheroes don't exist. As it is often the case, the key to understanding the film is at the very beginning. It's a partially inaccurate recap of the first film in which Arthur fights his shadow. The shadow, as defined by Carl Jung, is a theme that Joker Folie à Deux underlines by including Harvey Dent, this Dr. Jekyll to the Batman universe, and by constantly showing us the words Edward on the walls of Arkham, in which it's not hard to see Edward, Mr. Hyde's first name. But in the cartoon at the beginning of Folie à Deux, Arthur's shadow is outside of him and looks more like a curse from which he can't escape. This is exactly what his trial will look like. While it revolves around the question of Arthur Fleck's mental health and attempts to determine whether Arthur and Joker are two different people, it also takes the form of a trial where the accused claims that the devil made them do it. In this sense, Joker Folie à Deux proposes to contradict the first film. The Joker may not be what remains of Arthur Fleck once he has lost everything, but a curse that exists outside of him, that exists in Gotham, that takes hold of some part of its population, and that may take hold of some part of Harvey Dent. It's a curse with which Arthur Fleck made a pact, in the hope that he would finally be given some attention. In other words, Arthur let the Joker exist through him so that the public would finally notice him. Superhero fans would never have watched a film about Arthur Fleck. They only saw the first film because Arthur let the Joker take over him and over the title. But here he is, a prisoner of his own fantasy, a prisoner of the only way the public wants to see him, a prisoner of the only kind of film the public seems to want.
Let's give the people what they want.
At the end of the film, Todd Phillips doesn't give the public what it wants. Arthur manages to escape the Joker, and like the audience of the trial, the public leaves the theater disappointed that their attention was briefly drawn to something other than a superhero movie, to a society's reject rather than a big villain from a spectacle movie. Arthur dies in the indifference of his own world and of ours, while the curse of superhero movies promises to live on as it is passed on the man who just killed him and who's carving a smile on himself in the background. Arthur Fleck was ultimately not Batman's Joker, if Batman exists. Maybe it's this second Joker who just killed him, and maybe it's a third, the child Harley is about to give birth to, if she exists and if she's telling the truth. Either way, the Joker will eventually appear, if not in a sequel, in a reboot or in another franchise. Because like the citizens of Gotham, the public doesn't care about Arthur. What the public wants is spectacle. I went into the theater thinking that Folie à Deux was about the Joker and Harley Quinn. During the film, I started to think it was about Arthur and his shadow curse, the Joker. But as I left the theater, I finally understood the true meaning of the title. It takes two fools to create the Joker. Someone like Arthur, who agrees to become one, and someone like the public, who wants to be entertained. Knock knock. Who's there? Arthur Fleck. Arthur Fleck who? Arthur Fleck, the lead character in a drama that will not satisfy the superhero crowd.